One carefully worded sentence. One well-lit interview. One perfectly poised woman. And yet, within minutes, the internet erupted into chaos. What Meghan Markle said about her children, about her past, and about the one thing the world has been whispering about for years, left millions more confused, angry, and speechless than before. Because instead of answering the question, she danced around it. And in doing so, she confirmed what many had already feared. There's something she's still hiding. But before we continue, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell for updates. But let's rewind. Let's go back to the moment this all began, long before her Netflix docuseries, before the Oprah sit-down, before Montecito, and even before the palace gates slammed shut behind her. Because this story, it doesn't start with a scandal. It starts with a secret Meghan has carried, or tried to carry, for over 2 decades. And now, at 44 years old, with mounting pressure, global scrutiny, and a royal family on edge, she finally snapped. The question is, why now? And more importantly, what did she reveal about Archie and Lilibet that has every media outlet, every palace insider, and even some former Hollywood allies scrambling to contain the fallout? Because this wasn't just a clarification. It was a crack in the armor, a leak in the dam that's been holding back years of carefully guarded truth. Let's get one thing straight. The rumor didn't start in 2020. It didn't even start in 2018, when Meghan walked down the aisle in front of billions. No, it started long before. It began in casting rooms, on quiet film sets, in whispered phone calls in Toronto, in paparazzi ambushes and red carpet no-shows, in stories that were always just a little off, a little too polished, a little too vague. People whispered things back then, things about mysterious hospital visits, about life-changing decisions made when she was just a teenager, about health rumors, family fallouts, and a tight circle of friends who were either unusually protective or unusually silent. And as the years passed, those whispers evolved. They became Reddit threads, blind items, TikToks dissecting her every move, body language experts breaking down grainy footage, leaked emails, anonymous tip-offs, private investigators hired by tabloid media, and eventually, a war between Meghan's fiercely loyal defenders and her increasingly vocal critics. And through it all, Meghan said nothing. Until now. Until this week. Until that moment. When, in a globally broadcast interview, with a softly lit backdrop and sympathetic interviewer, she sat forward, stared into the camera, and said, "There are some things people have speculated about for a long time, and maybe it's time I said something. Not a confession, not a denial, not a full explanation, but just enough to send the world into meltdown." Because here's the thing. Meghan's entire public identity has always been defined by control. Control of the narrative. Control of the spotlight. Control of what is said, shown, shared, and most importantly, what is kept hidden. And so, when she chooses to address a topic that's been strictly off-limits for years, especially one involving her children, people notice. They notice every word, every pause, every moment where she could have clarified, but didn't. And in this case, the absences spoke louder than the sentences. She talked about modern motherhood, about protecting her journey, about medical challenges faced by many women, about complicated timelines, about privacy for the sake of Archie and Lilibet. But what she didn't say was even more shocking. She didn't deny the rumors. She didn't name what those medical challenges were. She didn't explain the discrepancies in dates, hospital records, or photographic timelines that critics have dissected for years. Instead, she smiled, calmly, confidently, and said, "Some things are private, but that doesn't mean they're shameful." A beautiful sentence, a loaded one, and for millions of viewers, it was confirmation. Within hours, #SurrogacyGate was trending again. Old threads were resurrected. Screenshots went viral. Former staff members who had stayed silent suddenly began dropping vague comments under anonymous handles. Even a former palace aide, previously loyal to Harry and Meghan, told one podcast host off the record, "The timing of that statement wasn't accidental. She's not trying to shut the rumors down. She's trying to reshape them." And perhaps that's exactly what makes this more dangerous. Because Meghan isn't denying. She's not confirming either. She's weaponizing the ambiguity. And in today's media world, that's more powerful than the truth. Now, Here's where it gets even murkier. Just days after that interview aired, royal watchers noticed something strange. A quiet, almost invisible edit on the official royal.uk site. A line in Archie's birth record, previously visible, suddenly redirected to a generic archive. Was it just a technical update? Or was it a sign that the palace was scrambling behind the scenes? Because when one reporter asked Buckingham Palace for comment, they gave a flat, no response to speculative media. But just 24 hours later, Princess Anne was spotted leaving Clarence House, reportedly after a high-level private meeting with King Charles and William. The subject of the meeting? Undisclosed. But according to two veteran royal correspondents, the atmosphere was tense, and several security vehicles were seen circling the premises for over 4 hours. Coincidence? Or had Meghan's statement triggered something even more volatile? And let's not forget Harry. Where was he during all this? According to insiders in Montecito, Harry wasn't even in the room when Meghan gave the interview. He appeared only at the very end, briefly, smiling but silent, as if he'd been called in to wave, but not speak. It was Meghan's stage, Meghan's moment, Meghan's controlled explosion. But what if Harry disagreed? What if this addressing the rumors was her strategy? Not their strategy? And if the palace was watching, what did they see? An act of desperation? Or a direct challenge? Because here's the bombshell no one's ready for. There may be more coming. More revelations. More corrections. More clarifications that aren't really clarifications at all. One source, a former entertainment publicist who's worked with Meghan before, told us, "This is just the beginning. What she said is step one. The next step is a docuseries. A book. A dramatic, truth-telling arc. And whether it's true or not, doesn't matter. What matters is control of the conversation." Which begs the question, if Meghan has finally broken her silence, why does it feel like the silence has only gotten louder? What's really behind this carefully timed statement? What's the palace hiding? And if Meghan wanted the world to move on, why did she say just enough to make sure it never would? Because what she said about Archie and Lilibet may not have been a full confession, but it was something else, something more dangerous. It was an invitation for the world to start guessing again. And guess what? They are. But what happens when one former royal nanny decides she's had enough and speaks out for the first time? What she reveals next will flip the entire story upside down. And it begins with a missing photograph. She was never meant to speak. For over 5 years, she lived in the shadows of royalty. Not in Kensington, not in Buckingham, but in the gray zone, the place between palatial grandeur and private exile. Her contract was ironclad. Her loyalty never questioned. Her name? Never printed. Until now. Until this week, when a single, grainy image surfaced online. An image that had allegedly been deleted from every official device, every cloud storage, and even the royal archival server. A photograph of a child. Not Archie. Not Lilibet. But a child that didn't match the timeline. A child taken months before Archie's birth certificate was ever signed. A child in the arms of a woman with a face blurred, but unmistakable to those who knew her. The former nanny. Let's rewind. The palace had its ways of vetting domestic staff. Security clearance, psychological assessments, extensive interviews. But Meghan? Meghan had her own way. She didn't trust the system. She wanted someone modern. Someone international. Someone with no ties to the tabloids. And when the right candidate appeared, a soft-spoken woman in her late 30s from Australia with a background in early childhood development and emotional trauma support, Meghan insisted she was perfect. But what made this nanny perfect also made her dangerous. She had no royal loyalty, no generational ties to crown staff, no allegiance to palace protocols. Only one priority, the well-being of the children. Sources say she was hired in early 2019, months before Archie's official birth. That alone raised eyebrows. But when questioned later, Meghan allegedly told aides, "We're just preparing. We want everything ready ahead of time." Reasonable enough. Except that's not what the nanny said. In a leaked WhatsApp conversation, timestamped February 2019, she messaged a friend back in Sydney. "I've been brought in to help with a newborn. But the birth isn't public yet. Very unusual. Can't say more." Unusual? Or pre-recorded? Because if Meghan hadn't yet given birth, who was this child? That's where the photo comes in. The image, originally posted to a locked Instagram account later deleted, shows the nanny in a sunlit nursery, cradling a baby swaddled in a distinctly British hospital blanket. In the corner of the frame, a man in scrubs, possibly medical staff, and pinned to the wall behind her, a calendar, dated March 2019. That's 2 full months before Meghan's alleged delivery date of Archie. And yet the room is clearly lived in. The supplies unpacked. The child, comfortable, alert, held with familiarity. No sense of day one panic. No sterile delivery room vibe. It's a scene of routine. A scene of already established care. And that's the detail royal watchers can't ignore. Because if this child was Archie, born in May, then what were they doing with him in March? When pressed for comment, royal spokespeople issued the usual line. We do not comment on personal matters regarding staff or family members. But behind the scenes, something shifted. 3 high-profile royal PR accounts suddenly went dark. One legal team reportedly launched a flurry of takedown notices across social media. And a private investigator, who had once been hired by a London tabloid to track Meghan's pre-marriage movements, told us, every time someone tries to bring up that nanny, there's pushback. Heavy pushback. Someone's scared she'll talk. Which raises the question, what exactly does she know? Multiple insiders confirm the nanny signed a confidentiality agreement, one so strict it included a clause banning her from even confirming she was ever employed by Meghan and Harry. But recently, following Meghan's carefully vague interview, the nanny allegedly reached out to a royal journalist under a pseudonym. Their meeting was brief, off the record, but one detail slipped through. There's a story behind those kids, she reportedly said. One that doesn't match what the world was told. Cryptic? Definitely. Confirming? Not quite. But paired with that March photo, the implications are explosive, especially when you realize what happened next. In late 2020, the nanny disappeared from all known professional databases. Her LinkedIn went blank. Her childcare certification expired and wasn't renewed. Her name was quietly scrubbed from nanny-sharing networks. Friends who once posted group photos with her suddenly removed her tags. And when one journalist tried to reach out to a mutual connection, the reply came back cold. She's under pressure. She can't talk. She's scared. Scared? Of who? The palace? Meghan? The legal system? Or maybe all three? Then came the envelope. A thick, padded manila envelope delivered to the mailbox of a royal gossip blogger known for breaking controversial stories. No return address. No fingerprints. No note. Just a single flash drive. Encrypted. Inside, 7 folders. All titled with dates ranging from January to June 2019. Only one folder was unencrypted. Inside it, the original photo of the nanny and the baby in the nursery. Higher resolution than the one previously leaked. And something else. A voice memo. Less than 15 seconds long. A woman's voice whispered shaky. If anything happens to me, please don't let them erase the truth. They've hidden too much already. Suddenly, this wasn't just speculation. This was a breadcrumb trail. And the person leaving those breadcrumbs was either desperate for the truth to come out or desperate for protection. Either way, it meant one thing. Someone inside had finally broken ranks. And the impact? Immediate. Social media erupted. Hashtag #WhereIsTheNanny started trending. Reddit sleuths began comparing photos from Meghan's baby shower in New York to nursery wallpapers seen in the leaked image. And within 48 hours, a prominent royal biographer publicly declared, "We've reached a turning point. The narrative is cracking." But not everyone was pleased. A Montecito-based attorney, often linked to Meghan's legal team, released a thinly veiled statement that same evening. Disinformation, illegal image sharing, and violation of privacy are serious crimes. We are considering all available legal remedies. But they didn't deny the image's authenticity. They didn't question the timeline. They didn't mention the nanny. Why? Because they knew addressing it directly would only make it worse. Now here's where it gets even darker. A week after the leak, the former nanny's apartment in London was reportedly broken into. Nothing stolen. No forced entry. Just rifled through papers. A missing USB. A smashed security camera. And on the kitchen table, a single, unopened letter. No stamp. No handwriting. Just a printed message. Some secrets aren't yours to share. She's since gone completely underground. No trace on social media. No forwarding address. Even her family has declined to speak to journalists. But those close to her say she's terrified and still in possession of more. So here we are. A deleted photo, a frightened woman, a whispered threat, and a timeline that no longer adds up. What started as a vague comment from Meghan, meant to put rumors to rest, has only reawakened everything she tried to bury. And if this is just chapter 1, then we have to ask, what else is out there? What other voices were silenced? What other images, records, or witnesses were erased from the story? And why, if everything was as it seemed, would someone go to these lengths to keep the world from seeing the full picture? Because the nanny may be hiding, but she's not the only one. Because next, we look into Meghan's medical records trail and the international clinic in Toronto that's been wiped from existence. But one insider says, I was there when the contract was signed, and I kept a copy. How do you erase an entire medical facility? Not just a name on a door, not just a line item on an invoice, but the clinic itself, the staff, the patient logs, the insurance billing, the archived appointments, even the building's blueprints. Because that's what happened in Toronto in early 2018. And for years, no one noticed. Until now. Until one former assistant, a quiet, invisible cog in the machine, came forward with a claim that has now thrown the entire timeline of Meghan Markle's motherhood into question. A claim that could dismantle the carefully curated myth of control. And it begins with a contract. Backtrack to late 2017. Toronto is cold. Filming for Suits is slowing. Meghan is quietly preparing to leave the show, and rumors of an engagement to Prince Harry are already swirling. Paparazzi begin clustering near her residence. But what they don't know is that Meghan is also making another kind of preparation, one even more private. Enter the Claiborne Institute. On paper, it's a wellness consultancy tucked inside a boutique office suite on Queen Street West. The kind of place frequented by women of high profile, lawyers, actors, athletes' wives. Discreet, low traffic, cash-friendly. But according to a woman who worked there from 2016 to 2018. Let's call her Claire. It was something else entirely. It was more than yoga and smoothies, Claire says. We had NDAs. The patients used aliases. And the services weren't all legal in Canada. When asked what kind of services, Claire pauses. Then, reproductive logistics. That's all I can say. But Meghan was one of the clients. Now here's where things get strange. Claire provided documents. Internal scheduling rosters, courier logs, and one partially shredded intake form with a client alias that matches a name Meghan allegedly used in other private bookings. But the key item? A 2-page agreement, timestamped December 18, 2017. On the top, an international surrogacy coordination service, registered in Zurich. On the bottom, 2 initials, MM. And the middle section, the one that's since triggered legal threats from 2 separate law firms, a clause stating, the client agrees to all terms of gestational contract arrangements, including anonymity, privacy conditions, and postnatal distance clauses for the primary surrogate party. Postnatal distance clauses? Why would such a clause be needed, unless contact after birth had to be limited or hidden? And if this was a misunderstanding, why was the clinic shut down just months later? With all patient files removed, staff non-disclosure agreements strengthened, and the office stripped down to bare walls, Claire swears the shredding process was rushed. We had 2 hours. An unmarked van came in. A team of men, not clinic staff, not local. They brought industrial shredders and heat-destroyed the hard drives. But I kept one document. That one document, the contract, is now sitting in a secure location, scanned, time-stamped, watermarked, and ready to be shared. But here's the twist. Claire doesn't want money. She doesn't want fame. She wants protection. Because she says since reaching out to a journalist earlier this year, her phone has been tapped. Her landlord received a background inquiry from an unnamed agency. And someone has been parking across the street from her building for 3 nights in a row. Engine running, lights off. Coincidence? Maybe. But Claire isn't waiting to find out. Now pause for a moment. Let's look at the timeline. December 2017. Alleged contract signed at Claiborne Institute. January, March 2018. Meghan's public schedule thins out. Multiple unexplained absences from Suits filming. May 2018. Royal wedding. October 2018. Public pregnancy announcement, 12 weeks along. May 2019. Archie born. That's a 17-month stretch. From contract to birth, which aligns with surrogacy timelines, but not natural conception based on the public due date. Could it all be a coincidence? Possibly. But when one timeline disappears and another quietly surfaces, especially involving a contract in a now-erased clinic, people start asking harder questions. And the palace? They're asking them too. Behind the scenes, a source from the Canadian Immigration Office shared something unsettling. When the Claiborne Institute filed its business license termination paperwork in 2018, it included a clause demanding all digital records be purged from national archives. That is not standard procedure. And the company that requested it? A shell corporation registered in Delaware, linked, through multiple offshore paths, to a law firm that previously worked with Archwell. Still think it's all just speculation? Meanwhile, Meghan's team has begun circling the wagons. One Montecito neighbor, who asked not to be named, said, "She's on edge. A car was double parked outside her gate for hours last week. Security's tighter than ever. You can feel the tension." And when Harry was spotted at a polo match in Santa Barbara this weekend, alone, withdrawn, visibly agitated, speculation grew. Because just like in the interview, he's not speaking. He's letting Meghan steer this narrative. And if what Claire claims is true, that may not be a choice, but a containment strategy. Now let's talk about Lilibet. Born in California. No royal title at the time. No hospital photos. No staff records. Just a brief statement from a spokesperson. Lily was born at Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital. But according to someone who worked at that hospital's admin office in June 2021, there's no trace of a patient named Meghan Markle on that day. No delivery under any of her known aliases. No security alert issued, which is standard for any high-profile birth. And the few details we do have were all issued by Archwell PR, not the hospital itself. So who verified it? Who signed the record? Who witnessed the delivery? No one can say, because no one knows. But Claire, the former assistant, says this silence isn't accidental. It's calculated. Meghan's always been 2 steps ahead. She anticipates the leaks, the questions, the narrative shifts. But this contract, she never thought anyone kept it. And now that someone has, she's scared. Scared of what? Exposure? Public fallout? Or the legal ramifications if the details don't match the version told to immigration authorities, royal protocol officers, or media partners? Because if any element of that contract involved legal deception, even unintentionally, the consequences could ripple far beyond her public image. Here's where things truly escalate. A US-based journalist, known for celebrity legal investigations, reportedly received an encrypted tip containing not just Claire's scanned document, but 6 additional pages from another source. Those pages include a transportation log for a private air ambulance used in April 2019, a medical waiver signed in LA, a surrogate compensation clause citing increased profile risk, a confidentiality rider with 2 unnamed parties listed as biological parents, and most damningly, a single line, allegedly in Meghan's handwriting, next to an appointment time. Do not contact Harry. He cannot know until it's confirmed. If this is real, and so far, every piece has passed preliminary verification, then the foundation beneath Meghan's public story is crumbling. Not because surrogacy is wrong, not because secrets are shameful, but because if this was a lie wrapped in royalty, sold to the public as a miracle, and used to solidify her place in the monarchy, then every handshake, every speech, every media moment built on that narrative was built on sand, and someone is about to blow it open. Because Claire isn't the only one talking. There's a second insider, a woman who worked in Zurich, a woman who coordinated the original contract, and she's ready to speak. Because she didn't just keep a copy. She kept everything. Next, she's known only as Eva. She never shows her face. But in a shadowy Zoom call with a reporter, she reveals a detail so shocking it calls the very paternity of Archie into question. And the name she whispers next will leave you breathless. She doesn't use her real name. She won't show her face. But her voice, trembling, accented, cutting through the static of a secure call, may be the most dangerous sound to ever echo inside the walls of Buckingham Palace. "Call me Eva," she says. "And don't record this." But of course, it was recorded. In a hidden file, on an encrypted drive, in the hands of a freelance European reporter who had spent the last 6 months digging through the shadows of Meghan Markle's Zurich connections, tracing offshore accounts, fertility networks, and sealed paternity cases that, on paper, do not exist. Until now. Because Eva isn't just some anonymous voice on a screen. She was there, inside the Zurich-based coordination agency, at the center of the deal. And, if her account is true, she's the last living witness to the one name Meghan never wanted anyone to hear. The man who may, or may not, be Archie's biological father. Let's rewind, because the trail to Eva is as twisted as the story itself. Back in 2020, a confidential source tipped off a European journalist that a powerful surrogacy consulting firm in Zurich, known only by the internal codename Lunaria, had been quietly acquired by a silent investor shortly after Meghan's wedding. Within days of that acquisition, all previous contracts were sealed. Staff were required to sign new NDAs. 2 administrators quit on the spot. And the digital infrastructure? Rebuilt from scratch. What were they hiding? One journalist thought it might be linked to a Saudi royal scandal. Another assumed it was a financial smokescreen. But it wasn't. Because in folder D9, buried under dummy labels and server proxies, was a digital audio file titled simply, Eva 17, a voice memo. 11 minutes long. And what she said in that file shook the room. In the audio, Eva describes the day an international client entered the Lunaria office under an alias. She doesn't name Meghan. Not directly, but the description is unmistakable. American, mixed heritage, very composed, watched everyone, didn't smile unless she meant it. Eva says the client arrived with 2 companions, both male, one older, one younger. Neither spoke during the meeting, and then came the request. She said she wanted to explore legacy options. That was the term. Not family, not children. Legacy. She was very specific about privacy and control. Eva recounts how Meghan insisted on total secrecy and had done her research. She didn't want donor banks. She didn't want random matches. She wanted traceable but deniable genetics. Traceable but deniable? What does that even mean? It means Meghan wanted a very specific kind of donor. A known entity. Someone close to the narrative. Someone who could remain hidden, but who wouldn't create genetic confusion if rumors ever surfaced. And then Eva drops the bombshell. She handed us a name. She said, "This person will do. Arrange a legal contract, but make sure nothing connects us on paper." The reporter interrupts. Was it Prince Harry? Eva's pause is chilling. No, it wasn't him. That single statement detonated across the journalist's network like a nuclear device. If Eva's telling the truth, then the child everyone assumed was Harry's may not be. And the name she claims Meghan provided? A man with royal connections. Someone adjacent to the monarchy. Someone with no official title, but close enough to make the resemblance believable. We won't publish the name here, yet, for legal reasons. But multiple former royal correspondents, when shown the clues, came to the same whispered conclusion. It's not who you think, one said. But it's someone who's been in the background for years. And the implications? Terrifying. Because if true, it means Meghan orchestrated the entire arrangement before the public pregnancy, with a donor chosen not for love, but for optics. A face that wouldn't raise questions. A background that could blend with Harry's. And DNA that could never be traced, unless someone like Eva spoke up. And Eva? She's not finished. In the second half of the voice memo, she describes a sealed envelope. One that was never meant to be opened. It was part of the final contract. She wanted one envelope with a copy of the paternity profile, sealed, signed, to be stored in our safe. She said, if anything ever goes public, this proves intent. Intent, not biology. Eva clarifies. She wanted it documented that the arrangement was intentional, not accidental. That this child was created with purpose, her purpose. And what happened to the envelope? That's the part that keeps the palace up at night. When Lunaria was acquired and restructured, all files were supposed to be destroyed. But Eva? She kept one thing. The envelope. Still sealed. Still signed. Still hidden. And now, with legal protections breaking down and insiders turning against Meghan, she's hinting at something unthinkable. If things keep escalating, if I feel unsafe, I will release it. Which means this isn't just about Meghan anymore. It's about Harry. Because if he didn't know, if that name was hidden from him, and if he truly believes he is Archie's biological father, then what happens when he finds out? Here's the deeper twist. According to one palace aide, Meghan's most recent interview, the one where she finally addressed the rumors, was a preemptive strike. She knew Eva was out there. She knew the contract trail was unraveling. She knew something could leak, and she tried to get ahead of it. But she didn't go far enough. Because ambiguity isn't protection anymore. Now it's fuel. And as more insiders come forward, as more pieces leak, the narrative isn't just cracking, it's collapsing. And in its place, a terrifying vacuum, where Meghan may no longer control the narrative, where Harry may be blindsided, where Archie and Lilibet's legacy, carefully curated for public consumption, becomes a minefield of speculation, betrayal, and revision. And the person holding the key is Eva, and she's watching, waiting for the moment to open the envelope. But what Meghan doesn't know is that someone else was in the Zurich office that day. A man in a navy suit. No name, no ID. He signed a second set of documents, and he left with a digital copy. And he's finally ready to talk. He was never listed on the paperwork. No name on the visitor log. No passport scan at the front desk. No security badge. No official witness statement. Not even a billing address. But he was there. Inside Lunaria's Zurich office on the day Meghan signed what Eva called the legacy contract. And now, 6 years later, he's ready to speak. He doesn't call himself a whistleblower. He calls himself a cleaner. Someone hired not to create chaos, but to prevent it. Let's rewind to December 2017. The same week, Eva claims Meghan walked into Lunaria's offices and quietly initiated the process that would change everything. At the time, Meghan's public narrative was reaching its peak. The engagement to Prince Harry had just been announced. Suits producers were preparing her graceful exit from the show. Tabloids were gushing over the biracial American beauty, entering Britain's most guarded institution. And behind closed doors, a logistical web was being spun, one Meghan never wanted exposed. According to our news source, known only by the codename Glass, he was brought in by an outside consulting firm that specialized in high-risk confidentiality structuring. His role? Not to negotiate, not to coordinate medical logistics, but to witness and to verify. When ultra-high-profile clients sign contracts that could come back to bite them, they hire firms like mine. Glass said in a secure call. We oversee the documentation process, confirm compliance under international law, and, if requested, take a mirrored digital copy of the final documents to a secure vault. It's like an insurance policy, a living record in case anyone tries to deny what they signed. And on that day in Zurich, he witnessed Meghan Markle sign a 3-part agreement. Part 1, legacy structuring and custodial control. Part 2, reproductive coordination and medical oversight. Part 3, paternal identity and postnatal legal standing. Yes, you read that right. Paternal identity. Glass never knew the full medical details. He didn't need to. But he says the third section was unusually specific. There was a clause that identified a designated donor party. Not the spouse, not the fiancé. The language was incredibly careful. It included terms like optical compatibility, social continuity, and lineage neutrality. I've never seen that before. That's not standard donor lingo. That's political donor lingo. And who was listed as the designated donor? Glass won't say. Not directly. But when asked if it was Prince Harry, his answer was immediate. No. In fact, Harry's name doesn't appear once in the contract. That changes everything. Because it means, if this is true, that Meghan entered a legal arrangement involving the creation of a child, without Harry's biological involvement, months before their royal wedding. And the person she chose? A man who has since remained in the background, but who was already connected to the monarchy through unofficial channels. Now here's where it gets even more complex. Glass claims that a 4th copy of the contract was created, not for legal purposes, not for the surrogate agency, but for a third party, a man he only refers to as the facilitator. This man, wearing a navy suit, no badge, no digital footprint, arrived late to the meeting. He was escorted into a second room, where the mirrored copy of the agreement was uploaded to a biometric USB device. He said nothing, just nodded, took the drive, left. Who was he? Some speculate he was an intermediary for a European legal firm. Others believe he was connected to a discreet royal family advisory board. One whisper even suggests he had ties to the Grey Men, a rumored unit within MI5 responsible for neutralizing scandals before they reached the crown. But the real bombshell? He didn't disappear. 2 weeks ago, the reporter who uncovered Eva's audio file received a handwritten envelope postmarked from Lisbon. Inside, a single Polaroid photo, time-stamped December 2017, showing Meghan leaving a Zurich building wearing sunglasses and a gray trench coat. A QR code, and a typed message. You missed someone. Follow the man in navy. The QR code led to a deep web file locker. One file, one access attempt allowed. Inside, a video. Silent, low resolution. But what it shows, Meghan, sitting at a boardroom table. A man, face obscured, hands her a pen. She signs. Then, she slides a second folder across the table. He opens it, takes out a USB, nods, and walks away. No words, but a transaction. And that man, the one walking away, was the facilitator, the second witness. Glass believes that man is still active. These aren't amateurs. These are institutional professionals. His job was to make sure someone had leverage. Because if the situation went public, the firm, meaning the royal institution, would need a firewall. A firewall? From what? From the truth? From responsibility? Or from fallout? If Meghan ever used that child's origin as a weapon against the monarchy? Because if the palace knew the child wasn't biologically Harry's and accepted him anyway, they'd be complicit in a global deception. But if they didn't know, then Meghan just detonated a royal time bomb without anyone realizing she'd lit the fuse. Here's the deeper twist. Glass says there was one more document, not part of the reproductive contract, not legally binding, just a single sheet, typed in all caps. It was labeled, Personal Statement of Intent, Archival Copy Only. And on it, one sentence. This child will be mine, in legacy, in optics, in public memory. The rest is irrelevant. Signed, again, with initials, MM. Not legally binding, but chilling, because it shows intent, not just to build a family, but to construct a narrative, a royal one, with control over every photo, every press release, every carefully staged moment. And that level of orchestration? That's no longer motherhood. That's strategy. So where is the facilitator now? We don't know. But one insider claims he's been reactivated, not to bury this story, but to prepare for what happens next if the sealed envelope in Eva's hands leaks and the paternity question ignites globally. Because when Glass was asked what that might mean for the monarchy, he didn't hesitate. A DNA scandal isn't just gossip. It's a constitutional event. If Archie isn't Harry's son, then his place in the line of succession was always invalid. And if Meghan orchestrated that without full disclosure, then every moment since, the baby announcement, the christening, the Netflix documentary, the fight for titles, becomes a fraudulent campaign of influence. One that could collapse not just trust, but the very legitimacy of modern royal protocol. And as this chapter closes, we now learn something even more disturbing. A palace memo, stamped, eyes only, was intercepted last month. Inside it, a single phrase. Prepare contingency plan. Zurich origins may surface. Threat level, scarlet. Scarlet, the highest tier, reserved only for threats with the power to dismantle reputations and possibly royal positions. And if that plan includes legal moves, media manipulation, and quiet exile, it means the crown is preparing for something they can't spin. And next, Meghan's Montecito circle is cracking. A former Archwell staffer reveals a hidden safe in the Markle residence, and what she saw inside will change the game. Forever. It wasn't the size of the safe that shocked her. It was what was inside, locked behind a mirror, coated with biometric access, hidden in a private wing of the Montecito mansion where only two people, Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, were supposed to go. And yet somehow, a former Archwell employee found it. She wasn't snooping. She wasn't even supposed to be in that room. But a chance errand, a power outage, and a door left slightly ajar opened a Pandora's box she will never unsee. And now, 3 years later, with Archwell fractured, friendships shattered, and the media storm circling, she's breaking her silence. She says her name doesn't matter. Just call me Daisy. That's what Meghan used to call me when she wanted something fast. But what Daisy found wasn't just fast. It was volcanic. Let's rewind. Back to 2021, shortly after the birth of Lilibet. Archewell was still in its early glory phase. Media partnerships rolling in, Spotify and Netflix deals freshly inked, brand consultants flooding the Montecito property like interns on caffeine highs. Daisy was hired as a private operations coordinator. Her job? Manage logistical communications between Archewell and Meghan's personal PR team, which often meant covering for inconsistencies, retroactively editing press documents, and ghostwriting family values statements. It wasn't scandalous work, at first, Daisy says. But slowly, you start to see the walls don't line up. The timelines don't match. And Meghan? She's always 6 moves ahead. Always editing reality. Then came the day of the file. It was a Friday. Staff were dismissed early due to a wildfire advisory in Santa Barbara. Daisy stayed behind to shut down the home server that linked Archewell's press database with Meghan's private hard drive, standard protocol during possible evacuations. But when she reached the second-floor server nook, she realized the auto-lock on the hallway door wasn't engaged. It led to the private suite, the one reserved for late-night Zoom calls, crisis PR discussions, and off-the-book storage. I hesitated. I really did. But I'd been sent there once before to deliver a box to Meghan. So when I saw the mirror glitch slightly, the kind that happens when something's been mounted over a panel, I knew. She pushed on the left edge. It clicked. Behind the mirror, a sleek, brushed metal safe embedded in the wall. No keypad, no dial, just a biometric scanner and a fingerprint pad. But next to it, on the floor, lay a slim laptop bag. Unzipped, a fingerprint glass cleaner beside it. And resting halfway out of the pouch, a sealed manila envelope. Unmarked, unlabeled, except for 2 things. A red wax seal with a stylized M, and a date, December 17, 2017. Daisy's breath caught. That date, she'd seen it before. In the Zurich documents. My hands were shaking. But I opened it. Slowly, quietly. I just needed to know. Inside were 3 items. A black USB drive. A printed contract, redacted, but unmistakably related to reproductive coordination. A handwritten note. 1 page. Flowing script. No greeting. Just lines. And the final line? Control the myth, control the memory. My children are mine by design, not by blood. And that is power. Daisy froze. She reread it 3 times. My children are mine by design, not by blood. She didn't understand. Not completely. But the implications were massive. Just then, footsteps. Not loud. Not running. Just deliberate. Daisy slid the contents back into the envelope, returned it to the bag, and closed the mirror panel with seconds to spare. But whoever had approached never appeared. That's when I knew that safe wasn't just for documents. It was for leverage. And Meghan? She was keeping more than receipts. She was keeping insurance. Daisy didn't speak of that day for nearly 2 years. Not to friends. Not to coworkers. Not even to the Archewell lawyer who'd once quietly warned her. If you see something you shouldn't, pretend you didn't. This house runs on selective memory. But when the rumors reignited, after Meghan's cryptic interview, after the Zurich leaks, after Eva's whispered revelations and Glass's contract testimony, Daisy couldn't hold it anymore. She reached out to a reporter using a burner phone. Gave no name, no address, just 5 words. Check the safe. She knows. The journalist, skeptical at first, traced her through metadata, voice matching software, and Archewell's former HR rosters. Eventually, they met in person, and that's when Daisy told the rest of the story. Because the envelope? It wasn't the only one. Daisy remembered something else. In the safe, behind the envelope, was a black leather folio. When Meghan had opened the safe before, months prior, Daisy had seen her remove it during a late-night Zoom call. What was inside? Daisy never touched it, but she saw labels. UK media, threat files. Royal correspondence, hold releases. Zurich originals, do not duplicate. Each folder marked, indexed, and dated. It wasn't just a paper trail. It was a control system. Meghan hadn't just orchestrated her narrative. She'd archived it, curated it, protected it, planned for war. And now, that system may be unraveling. Because Daisy also reveals that in Meghan's absence, during a wellness retreat in Ojai in 2023, the Montecito property experienced a brief server breach. Archwell's tech team dismissed it as a routine signal disruption. But Daisy knows better. Because that same week, someone from Switzerland requested a login to an old Archwell email subdomain. And that subdomain was tied to the Zurich transaction folder. The same one Glass confirmed. The same one Eva threatened to release. It's all connected. The contracts, the envelope, the safe, the secrets. And now, with the foundation cracking, Daisy has done the unthinkable. She didn't just leak her story. She leaked a scan of the handwritten note. The one that said, "My children are mine by design, not by blood." And as it spreads online, re-uploaded, reposted, dissected, the silence from Meghan's camp becomes deafening. But it gets worse. Because Daisy also confirms that Meghan's legal team recently changed strategy. Instead of denying the leaks, they're shifting to narrative ownership. They're preparing to reframe the story, not as scandal, but as survival. And if that's true, it means Meghan's about to spin the biggest bombshell of her life into a brand. But not everyone on the inside agrees. One Archwell board member, recently resigned, has just sent an encrypted message to a foreign journalist. 7 words. Check the nanny's diary. Page 42. Next, that diary was never supposed to surface. It was destroyed, burned, but one digital scan survived. And what's written on page 42? It isn't just shocking. It's a royal nuclear bomb. They thought it was gone, reduced to ashes. A quiet fire in a rented fireplace on the outskirts of Windsor, attended only by a legal representative and 2 silent members of the Sussex household staff. The nanny's diary, the one she kept daily from January 2019 through November 2020, was considered too risky to survive. A liability, one legal aid reportedly called it. A ticking time bomb, said another. And so it was destroyed. At least, that's what Meghan's legal team believed. What they didn't know? A single digital scan survived, smuggled out of the nanny's room by a friend weeks before the fire, uploaded to a secure European cloud, passed quietly, encrypted, through 3 different whistleblower inboxes, and eventually delivered anonymously to a journalist in Copenhagen who, at first, didn't know what she had. Not until she reached page 42. And read the line that has since been referred to in internal palace memos as the Scarlet Sentence. Let's rewind. The nanny, whom we first introduced in Chapter 1, was hired by Meghan and Harry in early 2019 under highly confidential terms. She was Australian, soft-spoken, experienced, and unlike most royal-adjacent staff, she kept a meticulous handwritten record of every task, routine, and emotional detail she encountered while caring for Archie. Her entries were never meant to be public. They were meant to be her insurance. And they were never meant to survive. But somehow this page did. Page 42, entry dated May 5, 2019. 2 days before Archie's official birth was announced. The entry begins with routine notes. 7:45 a.m. Breakfast prep. Goat's milk plus warmed organic puree, per mm's schedule. 8:10 a.m. Baby fussy during bath, soothed with skin-to-skin. 8:45 a.m. Morning nap, sunlight filtered per instructions. But then the tone changes. The handwriting becomes tighter, more urgent. And the next paragraph? Completely underlined. I asked him again about the dates. About the timeline. About the announcement. She just smiled and said, "What matters is what they see, not what they know. The truth is elastic. The love is real. That's what matters." Then, one final line. No context. No explanation. Just 10 words. Archie was born twice. But only one version survives. That sentence, just 10 words, has been described by legal analysts and constitutional scholars alike as the fuse on a nuclear narrative. Why? Because it raises a question so explosive, so damning, so destabilizing that the palace reportedly held an emergency meeting within 24 hours of the page surfacing. What does it mean for a child to be born twice? Here are the most cited interpretations. A staged timeline. That Archie's true birth date was different, earlier, and concealed. To sync with PR cycles or legal considerations. Surrogacy silence. That Archie was born via surrogate earlier than announced, and that the May 6th date was assigned for public convenience or constitutional strategy. Two babies theory. A wilder speculation that two infants were involved at different times during the transition period and public presentation. One for actual care, one for official appearances. Note, no official source has confirmed this theory. Regardless of the interpretation, the implication is the same. The truth the world was told may not have been the truth at all. Let's break this down. May 5th, 2019, the day of the diary entry. The nanny notes routine feeding, care, and infant behavior. Yet the official royal announcement, published on May 6th, stated Meghan had gone into labor in the early hours of Monday morning. Meaning, at the time of that entry, the world was being told Meghan hadn't even given birth yet. So why was the nanny recording infant care? More importantly, why was Meghan already referring to what they see and what they know as separate entities? It's not a mistake. It's not a typo. It's strategy. A calculated awareness that perception is king, especially when legacy is on the line. And Meghan has always played the long game. The backlash to the leak was immediate. Within hours of the scan surfacing online, multiple Archwell-aligned Twitter accounts went dark. A cease and desist letter was sent to the Danish journalist. And, most alarmingly, a private security firm traced the uploader's IP to a location in the south of France, where the nanny is rumored to be in hiding. According to leaked documents, MI5 issued a soft trace request, not to apprehend, but to observe. Why? Because if this page is real, it proves a coordinated timeline shift, active concealment of maternal logistics, and the use of a child as an instrument of PR and constitutional manipulation. In short, it blurs the lines between personal freedom and public deception. And that line is where monarchy collapses into chaos. But here's what no one expected. A second whistleblower, someone inside the palace, a member of the household's administrative division, the people who handled the birth registration. This person, using the pseudonym Scepter 42, submitted a statement through an encrypted UK journalism nonprofit confirming. The original draft of Archie's registration was created 2 weeks before May 6th. The date was left blank. They also alleged that a palace assistant was instructed to backdate one of the registration verification signatures, a move they described as highly unusual and likely illegal. And then, most chillingly, Scepter 42 confirmed that a sealed envelope from Meghan's legal team accompanied the form. With a typed instruction, "This shall be the official version. No alternates exist." But now, we know that's not true, because the nanny's diary is the alternate version. And now, thanks to page 42, it exists. One final layer. Inside the metadata of the scanned file, dug up by digital forensic analysts, was a hidden file name tag, day0_docs. It was added manually, likely by the nanny's tech-savvy friend who scanned the diary. Day 0. Alternate version. Proof that even inside Meghan's inner circle, people knew the truth had a doppelganger. And now, the question isn't just about who knew. It's about who lied. Was Harry in on it? Was the palace? Was the surrogate agency? Or was this Meghan's solo strategy, crafted, archived, and defended with precision? Because if there's one thing the nanny's diary proves, it's that Meghan never left anything to chance. And here's the most terrifying revelation of all. Multiple sources now confirm that a second diary exists. Not from the nanny, but from a private nurse, one hired after Lilibet's birth. And according to a source close to the Archwell legal conflict, that diary makes page 42 look like a bedtime story. Because if the first child's timeline was manipulated, and the second's even more obscured, then the crisis isn't just about one envelope in Zurich. It's about a multi-year deception across 2 nations, 3 governments, and 1 royal bloodline. And someone is about to go public with it. Next, the nurse who was paid to disappear is finally found. And what she says about Lilibet's origins may destroy every last thread of credibility the Sussex brand has left. She was listed as a temporary hire. No public photo. No press mention. Not even a contract filed under her name. But she was there, in the house, in the room, when Lilibet was brought home. And then, she vanished. Not fired, not resigned, just gone. Until now, her name was never meant to be known. In the official documents, she was referred to as Medical Support Liaison Number 3, a vague title tucked into a backdated service invoice from a private staffing firm in California. But the woman herself? Her real name is Corinne Tate, and for 2 years, she lived under a different identity. Funded, as it turns out, by a mysterious monthly retainer deposited from an LLC based in the Cayman Islands. The name of that LLC? Sapphire 14, one of several shadow companies traced back to Archwell's early-stage trust account restructuring. Why would a former nurse require a hidden income stream from the Sussex financial web? What was she being paid not to say? Now we know, because Corinne is talking, and what she reveals about Lilibet's first hours of life is almost too explosive to believe. Let's rewind to June 4th, 2021, the day Meghan and Harry announced the birth of their second child, Lilibet Diana Mountbatten-Windsor. In the public statement, the child was described as born at Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital at 11:40 a.m., weighing 7 pounds 11 ounces. Both mother and child are healthy and well, settling in at home. What wasn't said? No photo was ever released from the hospital. No medical staff came forward. No video, press, or confirmed security detail was ever captured on site. And the hospital itself refused to confirm the birth occurred there, citing privacy law. So how was the public to confirm it? They couldn't. And that's exactly what Meghan's team wanted. Corinne, at the time, was working as a perinatal support specialist, a type of private nurse who offers both postnatal medical observation and emotional recovery assistance, especially for high-profile clients. She had no idea her assignment was linked to the Sussexes. The agency simply said, VVIP client, 2-week live-in, no media contact, double pay. She accepted, and the day she arrived at the Montecito estate, something immediately felt off. There were no balloons, no flowers, no excitement, Corinne said in a recently recorded audio statement. It didn't feel like a house that just welcomed a baby. It felt like a house preparing for a production. According to Corinne, Lilibet was already there. Clean, calm, resting in a designer bassinet. She wasn't freshly delivered. No jaundice. No fur remnants. No hospital band. Her swaddling looked prepped, not spontaneous. And Meghan? Composed. Standing. No signs of recovery-related discomfort. No postpartum swelling. No medication schedules. No lactation equipment. Just her, gliding down the hallway in a silk robe, already smiling for invisible cameras. Corinne knew the signs. She'd seen real postpartum fatigue, real maternal pain, real hormone chaos. But this was curated. A scene built for control. Then came the instructions. Verbal only. No written shift logs. No infant feeding charts. No digital medication records. Just whispered commands through Meghan's assistant. Do not ask about the hospital. Do not refer to her as a patient. Do not speak to the press. If anyone calls asking for verification, refer them to the Archwell Communications Office. Most chilling of all, you did not see her arrive. Corinne asked, what does that mean? The assistant reportedly replied, it means this started at home. Now here's where the story takes a darker turn. On Corinne's third night at the estate, she was asked to accompany Meghan and Harry to a private upstairs study. They said they wanted to thank me, but it was more than that. Inside, Meghan presented her with a slim, white envelope. Inside, a cashier's check for $75,000, drawn from an anonymous trust. They called it a bonus, Corinne said. But the timing, the tone, it felt like a payoff. Alongside the check was a single-page NDA, thicker than most, printed on textured security paper. It forbade Corinne from ever discussing the child's arrival method, the time of actual delivery, the identity of any medical professionals present, any knowledge of pre-delivery arrangements or surrogacy-related discussions. That's when I knew. I was part of a cover-up. Corinne signed, terrified of the consequences. But she kept a copy. And that copy, scanned and time-stamped, now sits in the inbox of 2 European investigative journalists and a lawyer working with a Royal Accountability Group in Geneva. So why is she coming forward now? Because, as Corinne puts it, I believed in them. I thought they were fighting for freedom, but they were fighting to build a castle of mirrors. And the more I stayed silent, the more complicit I became. She adds, this isn't about whether a surrogate was used. That's not the issue. The issue is deception, control, lies wrapped in activism, manipulation sold as empowerment. And then, she drops the real bombshell. Corinne says that on her final day, while helping organize the nursery closet, she found a printed surrogacy contract. Not just for Lilibet, but referencing a prior arrangement, dated 2018. The same timeline as Archie. It was filed under Medical Zurich Correspondence. She didn't copy it. She didn't take a photo. But she read the first line. Continuation of Phase 1. Agreement for Phase 2 gestational arrangements. Identical anonymity terms. 2 phases. 2 children. 2 concealments. 1 carefully crafted narrative. Corinne was released from her contract after 12 days, earlier than expected. No explanation given. But days later, the first Cayman Islands payment appeared. And every 60 days since. It continued. Until last month, when the payments stopped. No warning. No message. Just silence. That's when I knew. Something was unraveling. Someone was scared. And now? She's no longer scared. Because she's not the only nurse. A second perinatal support worker, known only as Alicia, has confirmed she worked remotely with the Sussex household for 3 weeks via virtual consultations. And what she says, my notes were edited. My questions about medical follow-up were deleted. I was instructed not to refer to the infant as a patient in emails. She adds, this wasn't a recovery. It was a performance. And now, with Corinne's diary, scanned documents, and audio recordings making their way into international hands, the House of Sussex is running out of road. But here's the catch. Harry still hasn't said a word. Not in interviews. Not in official statements. Not in private leaks. And one royal advisor believes that silence may soon break. Because next, an anonymous donor has funded a private paternity test, and it's already been delivered to a Montecito mailbox. Who ordered it? Who's the test for? And what will Harry do if he opens the results?